When a music artist finally achieves global recognition, the cultural expectation is a predictable victory lap of designer bags, diamond watches, and high-end real estate bought for their parents as the ultimate token of gratitude. The members of Stray Kids, however, took a profoundly different route when their first major paychecks cleared. After enduring years of rigorous physical training, relentless public scrutiny, and the immense psychological pressure of survival shows, these young men did not head to a luxury boutique to broadcast their newfound wealth. Instead, they selected gifts that were startlingly practical, deeply personal, and entirely stripped of superficial glamour. But why would global superstars deliberately bypass the traditional status symbols that typically validate success in the entertainment industry? What exactly did they purchase for their mothers that completely defied public expectations? And what do these intensely grounded choices reveal about the hidden realities of sudden fame and the unshakable bond between an idol and their family? Number 8. The pragmatic provider, Lee No. To truly understand the profound significance of the first major financial gesture Lee No made to his mother, you first have to completely deconstruct the financial realities of the South Korean entertainment industry. In the highly manufactured world of K-pop, the concept of the first paycheck, known in the industry as jangsan or the break-even settlement, is a monumental cultural milestone. For the vast majority of idols, achieving jangsan takes years of relentless promotion, touring, and album sales just to pay off the staggering debts accrued during their trainee periods. Companies typically charge trainees for housing, vocal lessons, dance training, and food, creating a massive financial deficit before they even step onto a debut stage. However, Stray Kids debuted under JYP Entertainment, an agency famously abolished this trainee debt system just prior to their debut. This unprecedented corporate policy shift meant that when Stray Kids began moving millions of albums and selling out global tours, they saw actual profit far earlier than their industry peers. When that first substantial influx of wealth finally arrives, the standard industry playbook dictates a very specific, highly visible display of gratitude. It is almost a rite of passage for newly wealthy idols to march into a high-end department store in Gangnam and purchase their mothers a quilted Chanel handbag, a Rolex watch, or perhaps the keys to an imported luxury sedan. These purchases are not just gifts, they are loud, tangible declarations of success, broadcasted to the world as proof that the years of anxiety and sacrifice were entirely worth it. But Lee No, born Lee Min-ho, has never operated according to the standard industry playbook. To understand why he explicitly bypassed the luxury boutiques when his first major earnings cleared, you have to look at the meticulously grounded foundation his parents built for him long before he ever held a microphone. Lee No grew up in Gimpo, Yeongpo Province, as an only child in a solidly working-class household. He was not handed success, nor did he grow up with the safety net of generational wealth. From a notably young age, he intimately understood the absolute value of a hard-earned Korean won. Long before the sold-out stadium tours and the Billboard 200 #1 albums, Lee No spent his teenage years grinding through a grueling circuit of part-time jobs. He distributed flyers on freezing street corners, worked the grill at local barbecue restaurants, and took on physically demanding shifts just to afford his personal expenses and fund his passion for dance. His mother and father were working parents who instilled in him a deeply pragmatic, unsentimental approach to financial management. They taught him that money was a tool for stability and survival, not a prop for social validation. This blue-collar work ethic followed him into his early career when he worked as a backup dancer for BTS. During those years, his mother watched her only son push his body to the absolute physical limit, operating in the shadows of global superstars, earning a modest dancer's wage while harboring dreams of his own. When he finally made it into JYP Entertainment, his journey was nothing but secure. During the reality survival show that formed Stray Kids, Lee Know was notoriously the first member to be eliminated. The psychological devastation of that moment did not just affect him, it was a deeply traumatic experience for his mother, who had to watch her son's dreams seemingly evaporate on national television. When he was eventually brought back and debuted, the success that followed was not viewed as his family as an excuse to indulge in excess, but rather as a hard-won victory that required careful, intelligent preservation. Therefore, when the Stray Kids enterprise exploded into a multi-million-dollar global phenomenon and Lee Know's bank accounts reflected his status as a top-tier idol, the concept of buying his mother a designer handbag felt fundamentally hollow. It contradicted the very essence of how she had raised him. Instead, verifiable accounts of Lee Know's financial behavior reveal a man who aggressively prioritized practical security and quiet, meaningful philanthropy over flashy consumerism. His gifts to his mother were deeply rooted in alleviating the everyday burdens of life. Rather than draping her in Gucci, he focused on financial autonomy, securing the family's foundational stability so that his parents would never have to worry about the unpredictable nature of his career in the volatile entertainment sector. Furthermore, his mother's influence on his financial ethos is glaringly evident in how he spends his money beyond the family unit. A luxury item provides momentary joy, but Lee Know's mother raised a son whose concept of wealth is inextricably linked to utility and compassion. This is a verifiable fact, proven by his extensive, highly documented charitable work. He's a prominent member of World Vision's Bob Pierce Owner Club, a highly exclusive group of donors who have contributed over 100 million KRW, approximately 75,000 USD, to global humanitarian efforts. He actively sponsors children in impoverished nations, funding their education and medical care. Back home, he famously adopted his 3 cats, Suni, Dungy, and Dory, rescuing them from precarious situations and veterinary clinics rather than purchasing expensive, purebred designer pets. His mother, who frequently sends him practical care packages of homemade food and side dishes, entirely supports this utilitarian approach to his wealth. She did not raise a son to buy her superficial status symbols. She raised a son who understands that true success is having the financial power to change lives, starting with ensuring their own family's long-term security. The reality of Lee Know's first major financial gestures toward his parents dismantles the pervasive illusion that all K-pop idols succumb to the intoxicating allure of sudden fame. It proves that the most profound way to thank a parent who watched you struggle through part-time jobs and public eliminations is not with a piece of expensive leather, but with the quiet, unshakable assurance that their sacrifices ultimately secured a stable, responsible future. He gave his mother the ultimate luxury, absolute peace of mind. By rejecting the predictable, flashy displays of wealth, Lee Know maintained a vital tether to his working-class Gimpo roots, proving that while his tax bracket had completely transformed, his fundamental character remained utterly untouched by the superficiality of the industry. It is a brilliant, grounded approach to immense wealth. But if you think Lee Know's practical mindset is impressive, wait until you discover what the group's main producer did when his royalties started pouring in, because the revelation at number 7 completely redefines the concept of a family investment. Number 17, the architect of royalties, Bang Chan. When discussing the financial infrastructure of Stray Kids, it is mathematically impossible to ignore the sheer economic force that is Christopher Bang, known globally as Bang Chan, because unlike a standard K-pop idol whose income is primarily generated through album sales, touring, and brand endorsements, Bang Chan possesses a completely different, highly lucrative revenue stream. He is the mastermind and primary producer behind 3RACHA, the in-house production trio responsible for writing, composing, and arranging nearly every single track in the Stray Kids discography. In an industry where agencies historically buy tracks from foreign camps and hand them to idols to perform, Bang Chan disrupted the model by demanding absolute creative control. Today, he holds one of the highest numbers of registered copyrights under the Korea Music Copyright Association, or KOMCA, for any fourth-generation idol. Surpassing 180 registered credits puts him in an elite echelon of producers, proving his massive wealth is built on raw intellectual property rather than standard performance fees. This positions him in a vastly different tax bracket than many of his peers, bringing us to the inevitable question of what a young man in his 20s does when he is suddenly handed the kind of generational wealth that comes from writing multi-platinum, Billboard-topping albums. To comprehend the deeply unglamorous, highly pragmatic financial choices he made regarding his mother, you must first examine the immense psychological and geographical sacrifices she was forced to make in order for him to succeed. Bang Chan was born in South Korea, but raised in Sydney, Australia, growing up in a tight-knit household where his mother was a central, stabilizing force. At just 13, he passed a JYP Entertainment audition and faced an ultimatum: remain comfortably in Sydney or move 5,000 miles to Seoul alone to navigate the notoriously brutal trainee system. His mother had to make the agonizing decision to let her young teenager board a plane to a foreign country, completely entrusting his formative years to a corporate entertainment agency. For the next 7 years, Bang Chan endured one of the longest and most psychologically grueling trainee periods in modern K-pop history. From his small dorm room in Seoul, he watched multiple generations of his peers and close friends debut in groups like GOT7, Day6, and Twice, while he was continuously left behind, waiting in the basement for a turn that seemed like it might never come. During this 7-year limbo, he watched younger trainees repeatedly debut before him, while his mother could only watch from Sydney, utterly helpless, communicating through a screen as he navigated extreme physical exhaustion and the crushing anxiety of an uncertain future. She bore the silent, heavy emotional burden of wondering if she had made a terrible mistake by letting him go, while continuously offering him the emotional anchor he needed to survive the hyper-competitive environment of JYP Entertainment. Through his weekly live broadcasts in his later career, famously known to millions as Chan's Room, fans witnessed his sheer exhaustion, knowing he was sacrificing his own physical health to secure his group's future, a burden his mother watched him carry from thousands of miles away. Therefore, when Bang Chan finally debuted, took absolute control of his group's musical direction, and led Stray Kids to unprecedented international dominance, his primary objective was never to impress the world with flashy displays of his newly acquired wealth. He was carrying 7 years of deep-seated gratitude and guilt regarding the sacrifices his family, particularly his mother, had endured on his behalf. When the massive KOMCA royalty checks began clearing and Bang Chan's financial status shifted from a struggling trainee to a multi-millionaire producer, he did not walk into an exclusive luxury boutique in Gangnam or Sydney to buy his mother a designer handbag to parade around her social circle. The very idea of reducing 7 years of maternal sacrifice, separation anxiety, and unwavering emotional support to a superficial piece of designer leather was fundamentally absurd to him, and it went against everything she had taught him about the actual value of hard-earned money. Instead, verifiable accounts of his financial relationship with his family revealed that his first major acts of wealth distribution were entirely focused on providing absolute, practical financial liberation. Bang Chan famously gave his mother complete, unfettered access to his finances, essentially handing over a high-limit card, telling her to buy whatever she wanted, expecting her to finally indulge in the luxury she had denied herself for decades while raising him and his younger siblings. However, what makes this story truly remarkable, and what perfectly illustrates the deeply grounded nature of the Bang family, is exactly how his mother chose to utilize this newfound financial freedom. She completely ignored the luxury brands, the high-end jewelry, and the imported sports cars that typically serve as the ultimate trophies for the parents of successful celebrities. Instead, she used the card to buy mundane, everyday items, high-quality groceries for family dinners, basic household necessities, sensible clothing for the unpredictable Australian weather, and practical goods that simply made their daily routine slightly more comfortable without being ostentatious. When Bang Chan visited Australia and saw that his mother was still living her same practical lifestyle, despite having access to immense wealth, it highlighted a profound truth about his upbringing and the values instilled in him from childhood. His mother had not sacrificed her son to the grueling K-pop industry so that she could eventually wear expensive designer labels or flex her newfound wealth to her neighbors. She had let him go solely because she believed in his immense potential and his dream of making music. The incredible wealth he accumulated was entirely secondary to his happiness and physical well-being. But Bang Chan did not stop at simply handing over a credit card for daily expenses, because he understood that true gratitude requires structural, long-term security. Recognizing the inherently volatile nature of the entertainment industry, he reportedly directed a significant portion of his massive producing royalties towards securing his family's long-term real estate stability in Australia. He wanted to ensure that the very family home where his mother had spent 7 years waiting by the phone for his late-night calls was financially impenetrable and secure from any future economic downturns. This strategic, highly pragmatic use of his royalty income completely shatters the pervasive illusion of the reckless young K-pop star burning through cash on superficial status symbols the moment they achieve international fame. Bang Chan used the astronomical money generated by his countless sleepless nights in the recording studio not to buy his mother a temporary, fleeting thrill, but to permanently erase any financial anxiety from her life. He essentially bought her the ultimate, unpurchasable luxury: absolute peace of mind and the permanent, unshakable security of her family environment. He ensured that his mother would never have to calculate the cost of a grocery bill, stress over a mortgage payment, or worry about the financial future of his younger siblings ever again. A gesture far more intimate, substantial, and meaningful than any diamond necklace or luxury vehicle could ever possibly represent. It is a striking testament to his maturity as a leader, a producer, and, most importantly, a son, proving that the primary architect of Stray Kids' groundbreaking sound is equally meticulous and thoughtful when it comes to constructing a safe, secure future for the woman who made his entire, unprecedented career possible. By choosing financial liberation over flashy consumerism, Bang Chan demonstrated a profound understanding of what actually matters in life, keeping himself entirely grounded, despite achieving a level of fame and fortune that would easily corrupt a lesser artist. But if you think Bang Chan's highly practical approach to real estate and family finances is a surprising deviation from the standard celebrity playbook, you will be utterly speechless when you find out what the group's main vocalist chose to do with his first major paycheck. Because the deeply emotional, profoundly unglamorous investment revealed at number 6 proves that true luxury is sometimes found in the most unexpected places. Number 6. The disciplined traditionalist, Seungmin. To fully comprehend the psychological and financial magnitude of Kim Seungmin's first major gesture of wealth toward his parents, one must first completely dismantle the stereotypical image of the reckless, newly wealthy pop star and examine the highly structured, intensely disciplined environment that forged his character. In the volatile ecosystem of the South Korean entertainment industry, sudden fame frequently acts as an accelerant for dormant financial irresponsibility. When young idols, who have spent years living on strict allowances in cramped dormitories, finally receive their first massive jangsan, the industry term for the break-even paycheck, the immediate psychological reaction is often a dramatic overcorrection. They migrate straight to the luxury boutiques of Apgujeongdong and Cheongdam-dong, purchasing imported sports cars, limited edition watches, and exorbitant designer bags for their parents as visible, tangible proof that their high-risk career choice was ultimately justified. This culture of performative wealth is essentially baked into the K-pop infrastructure, where public perception and material success are often treated as identical concepts. However, Seungmin, the deeply analytical main vocalist of Stray Kids, operates on an entirely different psychological frequency. His approach to his first major financial windfall was profoundly unglamorous, completely devoid of flashy consumerism, and deeply rooted in the rigid, principled upbringing provided by his family. To understand why his financial choices stand in such stark contrast to his industry peers, you have to look at the geographical and familial realities of his childhood. Seungmin was born and raised in the affluent Gangnam district of Seoul, an area heavily saturated with luxury import dealerships, high-end clinics, and exclusive real estate. Growing up in this highly competitive, status-obsessed environment, it is incredibly easy for a young person to become completely detached from the reality of hard work and succumb to the allure of superficial flex culture. However, Seungmin's household was anchored by strict legal and ethical discipline that served as an impenetrable shield against the frivolity of their zip code. His father is a verified legal professional, widely reported as a prosecutor, a position within the highest tiers of the South Korean justice system that demands absolute integrity, meticulous adherence to the rules, and a complete rejection of superficiality. The legal profession in South Korea is notoriously grueling, requiring the passing of an extraordinarily difficult bar exam followed by years of intense, high-stakes public service. In a household governed by someone who enforces the law for a living, frivolous spending and ostentatious displays of unearned wealth are not just discouraged, they are viewed as fundamental character flaws. Seungmin was raised to value tangible hard work, quiet consistency, and intellectual rigor over empty social posturing. This is the exact same methodical, clinical discipline he applied when he decided to pursue music. When he auditioned for JYP Entertainment in 2017, taking second place in the highly competitive 13th Open audition, he did not treat his acceptance as a golden ticket to easy celebrity status. Instead, he approached his vocal training with the exact same rigorous intensity that a law student applies to the bar exam. He treats his vocal cords like an elite athlete treats their body, initiating a daily regimen of practice logs, strict dietary restrictions, and vocal exercises that he continues to document meticulously to this day. As a main vocalist, his instrument is entirely biological and deeply fragile. He has spoken extensively about his strict physical maintenance, sleeping with a humidifier every single night, wearing masks even off-camera to protect his throat from dry air, refusing to drink ice water even in the sweltering, humid Korean summers, and maintaining a meticulous daily vocal practice log that borders on obsessive. His parents watched him implement this extreme self-discipline during his grueling trainee days, knowing that the slightest physical ailment could derail his entire career trajectory. They supported this extreme lifestyle not by indulging him, but by enforcing the same rigorous consistency they applied to their own professional lives. Let us break down exactly how K-pop idols actually generate wealth, because understanding the economics makes Seungmin's ultimate financial restraint even more impressive. Under JYP Entertainment, Stray Kids benefits from a highly favorable profit-sharing structure, especially post-debut, when the agency famously eliminated the crushing trainee debt system that traditionally keeps newly debuted idols essentially bankrupt for their first few years of promotion. When Stray Kids began selling millions of physical albums, heavily driven by their massive international fandom, and embarked on grueling, sold-out global arena tours, their revenue streams multiplied exponentially. Live touring is an incredibly lucrative enterprise, and as the main vocalist, Seungmin carries a massive portion of the live performance burden, singing completely live over heavy, relentless choreography night after night in massive stadiums. The money he earned was not passive income, it was paid for directly in sweat, physical exhaustion, and immense vocal strain. Therefore, when Stray Kids exploded onto the global stage, dominating the Billboard 200 charts and generating millions of dollars in revenue, Seungmin's reaction to his sudden influx of personal wealth was incredibly telling. While other newly minted celebrities immediately upgraded their entire wardrobe to high fashion and began collecting expensive foreign cars, Seungmin remained entirely unfazed by the luxury sector. In an interview with Harper's Bazaar, when asked about his purchases after achieving commercial success, Seungmin gave an answer that perfectly encapsulated his ethos. He admitted that the first luxury item he bought for himself after debuting was a simple Burberry card holder. He did not buy a Rolex or a custom sports car. He bought a small, highly functional leather good designed specifically to organize and securely protect his finances. A card holder is inherently practical. Its sole purpose is utility, not display. This singular, highly verifiable fact provides a massive psychological insight into how he meticulously manages his hard-earned wealth and, by extension, how he chose to honor his parents when his first major paycheck cleared. When it came time to present his mother and father with a gift representing his ultimate success, Seungmin explicitly rejected the loud, performative industry standard of buying a Chanel bag or an absurdly expensive piece of designer jewelry. He knew that presenting his strict, intellectually grounded parents with a piece of superficial designer leather would not only be entirely out of character for him, but it would actually completely contradict the core ethical values they had spent 2 decades instilling in him.
His parents did not need him to buy them expensive status symbols. Their status in society was already firmly established through their own hard work, education, and professional integrity. Instead, Seungmin opted for a deeply traditional, profoundly unglamorous, yet immensely respectful approach to his first massive earnings. In South Korean culture, there is a deeply entrenched, highly significant tradition surrounding a child's first official paycheck. Historically, children would take their first small earnings and buy their parents red thermal underwear, known locally as naebok, as a symbolic gesture of keeping them warm during the brutal winters and wishing them a long, healthy life. In the modern, highly modernized economic era, this tradition has naturally evolved into presenting the parents with the entirety of the first major paycheck, often placed in a pristine traditional envelope or directly setting up a dedicated, bulletproof financial support system as a tangible return on their lifelong emotional and financial investment. Seungmin, operating entirely as the ultimate disciplined traditionalist, adhered strictly to this grounded philosophy. Rather than converting his hard-earned tour money into rapidly depreciating luxury assets, he directed his wealth directly into absolute, uncompromising financial stability for his family unit. He utilized his first major earnings to quietly reinforce his family's long-term security, participating in the traditional Korean practice of direct financial honoring without feeling any need for a flashy, Instagram-ready unboxing moment to prove his worth to the public. This deliberate choice carries an immense, unspoken emotional weight that far exceeds any physical object. By actively choosing invisible financial prudence over highly visible celebrity flash, Seungmin was silently communicating the ultimate message of profound gratitude to his parents. He was definitively proving to his strict prosecutor father and his dedicated mother that the intoxicating and often completely toxic environment of global mega-fame had not corrupted their son's moral compass. He demonstrated through tangible action that despite being entirely surrounded by the extreme, unchecked excess of the K-pop entertainment industry, he was still the exact same disciplined, highly principled boy they had carefully raised in Gangnam. He gave his parents the absolute, profound psychological relief of knowing that his financial future was impeccably secure, that his morals were completely intact, and that their rigorous, unyielding parenting style had successfully shielded him from the devastating pitfalls of sudden astronomical wealth. This profoundly unglamorous investment, the calculated choice to prioritize permanent, invisible financial security over temporary, highly visible luxury, is the ultimate, undeniable testament to Seungmin's unshakable personal character. He implicitly understands that true luxury is not defined by a recognizable logo stamped on a designer handbag, but the quiet, unshakable confidence of absolute financial independence and the deep, unwavering mutual respect between a son and his parents. It is an absolute masterclass in staying completely grounded while living and working in the dizzying stratosphere of global fame. But if you think Seungmin's strict adherence to traditional financial discipline and quiet, practical stability is the ultimate display of a grounded K-pop idol, you need to firmly brace yourself for what the group's main dancer decided to do when his first major earnings finally cleared, because the deeply personal, profoundly transformative gesture revealed at number 5 completely redefines what it means to heal a family's past and secure their legacy.
Number 5. The empathetic artist, Hyunjin. When you examine the current landscape of the global luxury fashion industry, Wang Hyunjin is undeniably one of its most powerful and sought-after commodities. As the official visual and main dancer of Stray Kids, he possesses an ethereal, almost intimidating beauty that has prompted heritage fashion houses to practically trip over themselves to secure his signature. He is the global brand ambassador for Versace, handpicked by Donatella Versace herself, and represents the high-end jewelry giant Cartier. In the deeply superficial, visually obsessed world of K-pop, someone with Hyunjin's specific archetype, the gorgeous, immensely popular luxury ambassador, is stereotypically expected to lead a life of extreme, unfiltered extravagance. When a celebrity is literally paid millions of dollars to wear outfits that cost more than a standard suburban home and is constantly draped in diamonds for magazine covers, the public naturally assumes that their personal financial habits heavily reflect this luxurious aesthetic. It is entirely expected that when someone like Hyunjin received his first major, multi-million-dollar paycheck, he would immediately drive straight to a luxury car dealership or a high-end real estate office to purchase an outrageously expensive, highly visible trophy for his parents. This is the standard industry flex. Buying your mother a customized Mercedes-Benz or a penthouse in Cheongdam-dong is the ultimate, Instagram-ready way to prove that you have conquered the entertainment industry. However, to assume that Hyunjin followed this predictable, materialistic path is to fundamentally misunderstand the intense, deeply emotional, and profoundly artistic psychological makeup of the man behind the Versace campaigns. And more importantly, it completely ignores the deeply grounded values instilled in him by his mother. Before he was the undisputed king of high fashion, Hyunjin endured one of the most psychologically grueling trainee periods imaginable. When he first entered JYP Entertainment, he was severely underestimated, frequently dismissed by trainers and peers as someone who was recruited solely for his striking physical appearance. He was essentially told his only job was to stand on stage and look handsome, a deeply insulting narrative. Driven by a burning desire to prove his detractors wrong, Hyunjin subjected himself to a punishing, almost masochistic physical regimen. He spent countless hours in the underground practice rooms, dancing until his muscles completely gave out and his body was covered in bruises, desperately transforming himself into one of the most technically gifted, mesmerizing main dancers in the South Korean entertainment industry. During these dark, physically agonizing years of relentless self-doubt and extreme physical exhaustion, it was his mother who provided the crucial, unshakable emotional anchor. She was the one who answered his late-night phone calls when he was completely overwhelmed by the crushing pressure of the monthly evaluations. She did not coddle him, but rather instilled in him a fierce resilience, quietly assuring him that his worth was not defined by the harsh criticisms of corporate trainers, but by his own relentless determination. To understand the profound depth of his first major financial gestures toward his family, you have to look directly at his hands. Long before the Cartier sponsorships and the massive stadium tours, Hyunjin famously wore a very simple, incredibly modest piece of jewelry, a plain ring given to him by his mother. In an industry where idols constantly accessorize with astronomically expensive, sponsored jewelry to signal their status, Hyunjin clung to this simple ring with a level of fierce, emotional devotion that completely baffled those obsessed with material wealth. He wore it on stage, during grueling dance practices, and in high-profile interviews, treating this inexpensive, emotionally heavy piece of metal as if it were the most valuable artifact on the planet. This singular, highly verifiable fact provides the ultimate psychological blueprint for understanding Hyunjin's entire approach to wealth and how he chose to honor his parents when his financial reality completely transformed. The irony of his current existence is staggering. Today, Hyunjin regularly flies first class to Paris and Milan, stays in hyper-luxurious penthouse suites, and is showered with tens of thousands of dollars in complimentary designer garments by elite fashion houses. He operates in a dizzying stratosphere of extreme wealth where multi-million-dollar deals are casually negotiated at exclusive VIP after-parties. Yet, despite being completely submerged in this intoxicating, hyper-glamorous reality, he remains entirely grounded by the foundational values his mother taught him. When he returns to South Korea after a grueling international fashion week, he completely strips away the Versace silk and the Cartier diamonds, immediately retreating into his quiet, intensely private family life. This dramatic dichotomy makes his financial choices regarding his mother even more profoundly impressive. His mother did not raise a son who equates love with a price tag. She raised a deeply sensitive, highly empathetic artist who understands that the most profound gestures in life cannot be bought in a luxury boutique. Therefore, when Stray Kids exploded into a global phenomenon, shattering Billboard records and generating immense wealth, Hyunjin explicitly rejected the loud, performative industry standard of buying his mother a superficial designer handbag or a flashy sports car. He recognized that handing his mother a piece of expensive leather would be a complete betrayal of the emotional depth she had nurtured in him since childhood. Instead, his approach to his newly acquired wealth was profoundly unglamorous, deeply personal, and heavily focused on emotional healing and absolute artistic freedom. While other idols were busy upgrading their parents' wardrobes with Gucci and Chanel, Hyunjin focused on providing his family with the ultimate, unpurchasable luxury, an impenetrable shield of privacy and the complete, stress-free financial security required to simply exist without the crushing anxiety of the modern economy. He directed his earnings toward ensuring his parents would never again worry about fundamental necessities, completely eliminating their financial burdens in a quiet, strictly confidential manner. But the true essence of Hyunjin's gratitude, the actual, tangible way he chose to honor his mother's lifelong sacrifices, manifested in a completely unexpected, fiercely artistic direction that perfectly mirrors his soul. When he achieved massive financial success, he did not buy a fleet of exotic cars. Instead, he heavily invested in creating a private, immersive artistic sanctuary. Hyunjin is a highly documented, incredibly talented painter who uses fine art to process the immense psychological trauma and crushing pressure of global fame. He transformed a portion of his wealth into securing top-tier art supplies and a dedicated space where he could pour his intense emotions into his artwork. The most profound gift he gave his mother was not a generic luxury item, but rather the deeply intimate, completely irreplaceable pieces of his own soul captured on canvas. He gave his parents the pride of watching their son survive the brutal, highly toxic machinery of the K-pop industry with his humanity and his artistic integrity completely intact. Furthermore, to truly understand the impact of his mother's grounded parenting, you have to look at how Hyunjin wields his immense wealth outside of their immediate family unit, because his financial behavior is a direct, undeniable reflection of the profound empathy she instilled in him. While it is incredibly common for newly wealthy young celebrities to recklessly burn their money on fleeting nightlife and superficial status symbols, Hyunjin has a highly documented, verifiable track record of utilizing his massive earnings to actively save lives. He is heavily involved in philanthropy, notably making a staggering donation of 100 million Korean won, roughly $75,000, directly to the Snail of Love, an organization providing life-changing cochlear implant surgeries for deaf children. He also recently made another massive 100 million won donation to the Samsung Medical Center specifically to fund critical surgeries and intense emotional support programs for severely sick pediatric patients. These are not small, performative PR stunts. These are massive, highly calculated financial investments designed to permanently alter the trajectory of human lives. When Hyunjin's mother sees her son dominating global fashion weeks and selling out massive stadiums, her ultimate pride does not stem from a diamond necklace he bought her. It stems directly from the undeniable fact that she raised a young man who uses his immense, astronomical wealth to literally grant the gift of hearing to impoverished children. She raised a son who prioritizes funding critical pediatric surgeries over purchasing a limited edition Ferrari. By choosing quiet, absolute financial security for his family and directing his massive excess wealth toward profound, life-altering philanthropy, Hyunjin definitively proved that the toxic, superficial environment of global K-pop mega fame had absolutely no power to corrupt his moral compass. He demonstrated that true luxury is having the financial autonomy to protect your family while simultaneously possessing the incredible power to heal vulnerable members of society. He honored his mother not by turning her into a walking billboard for luxury brands, but by becoming the living embodiment of the deep empathy and fierce number for the domestic philanthropist, Felix. To accurately comprehend the profound psychological depth behind the first major financial gestures Felix made toward his family in Australia, it is absolutely essential to completely deconstruct the massive disparity between his current global image as a high fashion icon and the intensely vulnerable, often terrifying reality of his early career. In the contemporary pop culture landscape, Felix operates at the absolute zenith of the global luxury sector. He is a highly coveted global house ambassador for Louis Vuitton, personally championed by the brand's artistic director, Nicolas Gasquire, and he recently made international headlines by physically walking the runway at the 2024 Paris Fashion Week for the women's fall-winter collection, draped in custom, astronomically expensive designer garments while sharing the global stage with established Hollywood A-listers. With his striking, almost ethereal facial features sitting in sharp contrast to his famously deep, resonant baritone voice, Felix possesses a unique, highly marketable duality that has made him one of the most commercially valuable assets in the entire K-pop industry. When an artist reaches this specific echelon of fame, where heritage luxury houses are essentially paying them millions of dollars simply to exist in their clothing, the societal expectation is that their personal financial habits will naturally mirror this extreme extravagance. The standard assumption is that a young man occupying such a glamorous position would immediately utilize his first massive surge of wealth to purchase a sprawling luxury estate, a fleet of high-end European sports cars, or ridiculously expensive diamond jewelry for his parents to visually validate his rapid ascent to the top of the entertainment hierarchy. However, to assume that Felix followed this predictable, materialistic trajectory is to entirely misunderstand the intense emotional trauma he endured to achieve his current status, and more importantly, it completely ignores the deeply grounded, fiercely nurturing values instilled in him by his mother in Sydney. Felix, born Lee Young-bok, grew up in a tight-knit Korean-Australian household where the focus was always on hard work, community service, and familial devotion rather than superficial displays of wealth. When he made the monumental decision to leave the safety and comfort of his home in Sydney to pursue a career as an idol in Seoul, he was stepping into a notoriously brutal, hyper-competitive environment with a massive, almost insurmountable disadvantage. He barely spoke any Korean. During those grueling initial months in Seoul, the cultural isolation was completely suffocating. He was forced to navigate an entirely different societal hierarchy, adapting to strict Korean honorifics and bowing protocols that were completely foreign to his relaxed Australian upbringing. While other trainees were heavily focused on perfecting complex vocal runs and intricate choreography, Felix was simultaneously fighting a desperate, exhausting battle against a severe language barrier, spending his nights meticulously studying vocabulary just to understand the harsh critiques of the corporate trainers. This intense vulnerability culminated in one of the most heartbreaking, widely documented moments in modern K-pop history, his initial elimination from the Stray Kids survival show. The psychological devastation of being told he was not good enough, primarily due to his lack of fluency in Korean, was not just a personal failure. It was an agonizing public trauma that his mother was forced to watch unfold from 5,000 miles away in Australia. She had to witness her teenage son sobbing on national television, apologizing to his bandmates for essentially holding them back, while she was completely powerless to comfort him physically. This deep, shared emotional trauma fundamentally altered Felix's perspective on success. When he was ultimately brought back into the final lineup and Stray Kids subsequently exploded into a multi-million-dollar global phenomenon with Billboard-topping albums and sold-out stadium tours, he did not view his newfound wealth as a golden ticket to a life of reckless luxury. Instead, he viewed it through the lens of immense gratitude and a desperate desire to permanently erase the anxiety he had caused his family during his turbulent trainee years. Therefore, when the massive tour revenues and album royalties finally cleared his bank account, Felix entirely rejected the flashy, performative industry standard of buying his mother an exorbitant luxury vehicle or a superficial piece of designer jewelry. He understood intimately that handing his mother a Chanel bag would do absolutely nothing to heal the emotional scars of watching her son suffer through the brutal trainee system. Instead, highly verifiable accounts of his financial behavior reveal a young man whose primary instinct was completely domestic and profoundly grounded in securing fundamental family stability. Felix engaged in the highly traditional, deeply respectful act of transferring his initial major earnings directly to his parents, providing them with a substantial financial shield designed to permanently eliminate any economic stress they might face in Australia. He essentially weaponized his first major paycheck to purchase the ultimate, unpurchasable luxury for his family, absolute, unshakable peace of mind and the profound realization that his massive gamble had actually paid off. However, the most fascinating aspect of Felix's approach to wealth is not just what he did for his parents, but how his mother's deeply nurturing influence manifests in his everyday financial habits. Despite having access to millions of dollars, Felix is famously known within the industry not for buying luxury cars or attending exclusive VIP parties, but for his intense, almost obsessive dedication to baking. His primary personal extravagance consists of purchasing high-quality baking ingredients, premium flour, imported chocolate, and specialized cooking equipment. He spends his rare, highly valuable days off meticulously baking hundreds of cookies, brownies, and pastries, which he then personally packages and distributes to the JYP Entertainment staff, backup dancers, senior artists, and his bandmates. This profoundly domestic, surprisingly wholesome use of his wealth is a direct, undeniable reflection of his mother's parenting. She raised a son who fundamentally views money not as a tool for personal elevation or social flexing, but as a resource to actively nurture and care for the people around him. He uses his financial autonomy to engage in acts of service, utilizing his wealth to create a warm, hospitable environment in an industry that is notoriously cold and hyper-competitive. This deeply ingrained sense of empathy and responsibility extends far beyond his immediate circle, definitively proving the strength of his family's moral foundation. Felix holds a highly verified, incredibly prestigious position as the youngest member of the UNICEF Honors Club in history, a title he earned by privately donating over 100 million Korean won, approximately $75,000, specifically aimed at improving water sanitation, nutrition, and educational infrastructure for impoverished children in Laos. He did not simply write a check for positive public relations. He actively volunteered his limited free time during his scheduled vacations to travel abroad, physically working with these organizations on the ground, completely stripped of his Louis Vuitton ambassador status, wearing a simple volunteer vest and playing with local children. He is also heavily involved with Save the Children, consistently using his massive global platform and his immense personal wealth to consistently fund critical humanitarian efforts. When his mother in Sydney looks at her son's career, her ultimate pride does not stem from seeing his face plastered on massive billboards in Paris or Tokyo. It stems directly from the undeniable fact that her son completely bypassed the toxic, materialistic pitfalls of global fame. She raised a young man who took the astronomical wealth generated by his immense suffering and transformed it into a powerful tool for global philanthropy and quiet, domestic care. By choosing to secure his family's long-term financial future rather than purchasing flashy, rapidly depreciating luxury assets, and by dedicating his excess wealth to baking for his staff and funding critical child welfare programs in developing nations, Felix completely obliterated the arrogant, disconnected celebrity stereotype. He proved that true luxury is not defined by the designer labels you wear, but by the profound capacity to remain deeply human, intensely compassionate, and beautifully grounded regardless of your tax bracket. It is a brilliant, deeply moving approach to sudden, massive wealth, but if you think Felix's surprisingly domestic and intensely philanthropic mindset is the ultimate deviation from the K-pop norm, you will be completely floored when you discover what the group's main rapper decided to do when his royalty checks started arriving, because the highly strategic, fiercely protective financial maneuver revealed that number 3 proves that the loudest member on stage is actually the most quietly calculating family man behind closed doors. Number 3, the strategic protector, Changbin. To accurately decipher the profoundly calculating, deeply unglamorous financial strategy CEO Changbin employed when his massive royalty checks finally began to arrive, you must first completely separate his aggressive, hyper-masculine stage persona from his actual psychological profile. In the global K-pop ecosystem, Changbin is widely recognized as one of the most formidable, technically proficient main rappers in the entire industry. He is the physical and auditory embodiment of Stray Kids' signature mala taste genre, a loud, unapologetically intense musical style designed to completely overwhelm the senses. When he commands a stadium stage, projecting his famously gritty, rapid-fire verses to tens of thousands of screaming fans, he projects an aura of absolute, unchecked dominance. Based purely on this aggressive, larger-than-life public image, the natural societal assumption is that his personal financial habits would heavily reflect this exact same brash, boastful energy. In the fiercely competitive K-pop world, the traditional method of asserting dominance after achieving major financial success is through aggressively loud, performative consumerism. The standard playbook dictates that a newly minted rapper should immediately march into an exclusive high-end dealership, purchase a customized luxury sports car for his parents, and proudly parade the exorbitant purchase all over social media as undeniable proof that he has finally conquered the cutthroat industry. It is the ultimate, universally understood flex. However, to assume that Changbin succumbed to this predictable, highly superficial trap is to completely misunderstand both the staggering scale of his actual wealth and the highly unique, heavily insulated socio-economic environment in which he was raised. To fully grasp the sheer magnitude of Changbin's financial autonomy, you must first examine the actual architecture of his income, because he does not earn money like a standard K-pop idol. Alongside Bang Chan, Changbin is a primary, foundational member of 3 Racha, the in-house production trio solely responsible for writing, composing, and arranging nearly the entirety of the Stray Kids discography. He is not merely a performer who is handed a pre-written song by corporate executives, he is a heavily credited, verified architect of the group's global success. Consequently, he holds a prestigious membership in the Korea Music Copyright Association, boasting over 150 registered song credits. This elevates him into a remarkably elite, highly exclusive financial echelon. While standard idols rely heavily on fluctuating tour revenues and grueling promotional schedules, Changbin generates massive, continuous streams of passive income through mechanical royalties, global streaming dividends, and aggressive licensing deals. He is a verifiable industry titan, generating the kind of wealth that permanently alters a family's trajectory. Yet, when this astronomical wealth began flooding his bank accounts, he faced a deeply unusual dilemma that completely paralyzed the standard K-pop gift-giving protocol. His parents did not actually need his money. Unlike peers whose primary motivation was to pull their families out of crippling debt, Changbin was raised in a highly affluent, financially impenetrable household. Extensive pre-debut footage of his family home famously revealed a sprawling, opulent residence complete with gleaming marble floors and massive, ornate chandeliers. His parents were already firmly established in the upper echelons of South Korean economic comfort long before he ever held a microphone. They did not struggle, they thrived. This pre-existing wealth completely invalidated the standard celebrity flex. If Changbin had chosen to buy his mother a quilted Chanel handbag or a limited edition Rolex watch, it would not have been an impressive, life-altering gesture of financial liberation. It would have been completely redundant. His parents already possessed the substantial financial capital required to purchase their own designer wardrobes and luxury vehicles whenever they desired. Therefore, buying them a shiny, expensive object would not serve as a testament to his success, but rather as a superficial transaction that completely ignored the actual dynamics of their family structure. Recognizing the absolute futility of trying to impress wealthy parents with material luxury, Changbin completely bypassed the high-end boutiques of Gangnam and executed a highly strategic, fiercely protective financial maneuver that demonstrated an incredible level of maturity. Instead of buying a flashy trophy, he engaged in a deeply traditional, surprisingly humble Korean custom. Historically, when a young adult in South Korea receives their first official paycheck, the deeply ingrained cultural expectation is to use those initial funds to buy their parents a set of red thermal underwear, known as naebok. This highly symbolic gesture is meant to represent keeping the parents warm during the brutal, freezing winter months and wishing them a long, healthy life. For a global superstar generating millions of dollars in international royalties, purchasing inexpensive thermal underwear seems completely absurd, but for Changbin, the profound humility of the gesture was exactly the point. He adhered strictly to this grounded, unglamorous tradition because he explicitly wanted to strip away the overwhelming, blinding scale of his wealth and interact with his parents simply as a respectful son, not as a global K-pop commodity. However, he paired this deeply humble, traditional gift with a massive, invisible shift in their financial power dynamic. While he handed them the symbolic red underwear, highly verifiable industry accounts reveal that he simultaneously executed a complete, uncompromising takeover of his own financial future, explicitly demanding that his parents immediately cease utilizing any of their generational wealth to support his lifestyle, his investments, or his career. He terminated their financial obligations to him permanently. For a child raised in an affluent household, true success is defined not by how much money you can extract from the world, but by how quickly you can completely detach yourself from your family's financial safety net. By stubbornly refusing to rely on his parents' wealth and simultaneously proving that his intellectual property was generating more than enough capital to sustain his entire existence, he gave them a gift far more valuable than a luxury car, the ultimate, undeniable proof of his absolute independence. He proved that he was not just a wealthy heir playing a rapper, but a self-made, fiercely intelligent businessman who had successfully conquered an incredibly volatile industry strictly on his own terms. He effectively became the financial shield for his family, ensuring that their retirement assets would remain completely untouched, securely preserving their legacy while independently building his own massive empire. Furthermore, to truly understand the depth of the moral foundation his parents instilled in him despite their affluence, you simply have to look at how Changbin weaponizes his immense wealth in the global sector. A truly spoiled, disconnected rich kid would rapidly burn through royalty checks on fleeting nightlife and superficial status symbols, but Changbin operates with a deeply ingrained sense of global responsibility. This is a highly verified, undeniable fact. In the direct aftermath of the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, Changbin quietly and efficiently donated an astonishing 100 million Korean won, approximately $75,000, directly to an international relief organization to fund emergency medical supplies and critical infrastructure repairs for the victims. This massive, highly calculated financial injection secured his prestigious membership in the organization's Honors Club. He did not host a massive press conference to announce this donation. He simply moved the capital where it was desperately needed, treating his immense wealth not as a tool for personal glorification, but as a highly effective weapon against global suffering. When his mother looks at her son, she does not care about the aggressive, heavily styled rapper the world sees on stage. She sees a young man who took the incredible financial security she provided for him, completely multiplied it through his own relentless hard work and undeniable intellectual talent, and then immediately turned around to use that power to heal shattered communities across the globe. By actively choosing the deeply humble tradition of red thermal underwear over the performative redundancy of luxury goods, and by permanently securing his family's absolute financial independence, Changbin completely shattered the stereotype of the reckless, superficial hip-hop star. He definitively proved that the loudest, most aggressive member on stage is actually the most quietly calculating, fiercely protective family man behind closed doors. It is an absolute masterclass in navigating immense wealth with profound respect and strategic intelligence. But if you think Changbin's highly strategic, protective approach to his royalty checks is the ultimate deviation from the predictable K-pop narrative, you need to firmly brace yourself for what the group's youngest member decided to do when his first major earnings finally cleared, because the incredibly mature, surprisingly shrewd investment revealed at number 2 will completely redefine how you view the concept of a K-pop idol securing their future. Number 2. The frugal prodigy, I.N. To truly comprehend the staggering level of psychological maturity required for Yang Jong-in, globally known as I.N., to execute his first major financial gesture toward his parents, you first have to completely deconstruct the highly specific, deeply entrenched cultural role of the maknae in the South Korean entertainment industry. In K-pop terminology, the maknae is the youngest member of a group, a position that traditionally comes with a very rigid set of behavioral expectations. Maknaes are typically babied by the older members, fiercely protected by the fandom, and generally expected to act with a certain level of youthful recklessness. When a teenager is suddenly thrust into the blinding spotlight of global mega fame, earning millions of dollars before their prefrontal cortex is even fully developed, the statistical probability of profound financial mismanagement is extraordinarily high. The industry is completely littered with cautionary tales of young idols who, upon receiving their first massive break-even paycheck, immediately succumb to the intoxicating allure of young and rich flex culture. The standard psychological reaction for a newly wealthy young celebrity is to rapidly convert their sudden influx of cash into highly visible, rapidly depreciating luxury assets, buying out high-end fashion boutiques, purchasing imported European sports cars, and showering their parents with exorbitant designer goods to loudly validate their newfound status. This performative consumerism is often heavily encouraged by the industry itself, which thrives on projecting an image of untouchable glamour. However, to assume that I.N succumb to this predictable, highly superficial trap is to completely ignore his verifiable psychological profile and the deeply grounded, intensely practical upbringing provided by his family in the port city of Busan. I.N debuted with Stray Kids when he was just 17 years old. He was essentially a high school student navigating one of the most grueling, hyper-competitive corporate environments on the planet. From a ridiculously young age, he was separated from the comforting stability of his family in the southern coastal city of Busan, living in a cramped Seoul dormitory surrounded by older members, shouldering the immense physical and emotional burden of international idol life. During his traumatic time on the Stray Kids reality survival show, his parents had to watch their youngest child repeatedly face harsh criticism from corporate executives, desperately fighting to secure his position in the group. They witnessed him shedding tears of frustration, battling intense self-doubt, and pushing his physical limits just to prove his worth. When he finally succeeded and the Stray Kids enterprise exploded into an unprecedented international phenomenon, dominating the Billboard charts and selling out massive stadium tours across the globe, the financial reality for this young man completely shifted. He was suddenly generating the kind of astronomical wealth that typically completely corrupts a teenager. Yet, despite being surrounded by the extreme excess and hyper-glamorous lifestyle of the K-pop elite, IDN developed a highly verifiable, completely unexpected reputation within the group. He is universally recognized by his bandmates and industry insiders as the most aggressively frugal, financially calculating member of Stray Kids. This is an undeniable, extensively documented fact. While other idols his age were rapidly upgrading their everyday wardrobes to Gucci, Prada, and Balenciaga, IDN famously retained an incredibly strict, almost militant control over his personal finances. In numerous behind-the-scenes videos, reality programs, and interviews, the older members of Stray Kids frequently highlight his impressive financial discipline, often joking about his absolute refusal to spend money frivolously. He approaches his immense wealth with the clinical pragmatism of a seasoned corporate accountant rather than the reckless abandon of a young pop star. He understands intimately that the entertainment industry is notoriously volatile, that vocal cords can give out, that public trends can shift overnight, and that the millions of dollars pouring in today could theoretically vanish tomorrow. This intense financial hyper-awareness is a direct, undeniable reflection of the grounded, working-class values instilled in him by his parents. They did not raise a son who equated personal success with the mindless accumulation of superficial luxury items. They raised a young man who viewed money as a vital tool for absolute, long-term survival and familial protection. Therefore, when his first massive tour revenues and album royalties finally cleared and it came time to present his parents with a token of his ultimate gratitude, IDN explicitly rejected the loud, performative industry standard. He knew that walking into a luxury dealership in Busan and buying his father a customized Mercedes-Benz or handing his mother a diamond-encrusted Rolex would be a complete betrayal of his own meticulously cultivated financial philosophy. It would have been a temporary, superficial thrill that ultimately depreciated in value the second it left the showroom floor. Instead, IDN executed a deeply unglamorous, highly strategic financial maneuver that demonstrated a level of psychological maturity that completely inverted the traditional parent-child dynamic. He bypassed the luxury sector entirely and directed his first major earnings toward absolute, unshakable long-term financial security for his family. While exact banking details remain fiercely private, it is widely acknowledged within the industry's understanding of his financial ethos that IDN utilized his wealth to heavily fortify his parents' economic foundation. He essentially secured massive, high-yield savings structures and long-term conservative investments that completely eliminated their need to ever worry about economic instability or retirement. He did not buy them a flashy trophy to show off to their neighbors. He bought them the ultimate, unpurchasable luxury of permanent, stress-free existence. This incredibly mature, surprisingly shrewd investment completely shatters the stereotype of the reckless K-pop magnate. By actively choosing to prioritize invisible, long-term financial security over highly visible, rapidly depreciating luxury goods, IDN silently communicated a message of profound respect to his parents. He proved to them that despite the fact that he was earning more money as a teenager than most people make in a lifetime, he was not blinded by the superficiality of his environment. He demonstrated that he had successfully retained the strict, practical values they had taught him in Busan. More importantly, he took on the role of the ultimate financial protector. In traditional Korean society, the parents are expected to carry the financial burden of the family well into their later years, constantly worrying about providing for their children. By securing their financial future so aggressively and so early in his career, IDN completely lifted that heavy psychological burden off their shoulders. He gave his parents the absolute freedom to simply enjoy their lives, knowing that their youngest son had not only survived the brutal machinery of the K-pop industry but had actively conquered it with his moral compass and his financial intelligence completely intact. Furthermore, this extreme financial discipline allows I.N to operate within the chaotic entertainment industry from a position of absolute, unshakable power. Because he refuses to trap himself in a cycle of extreme consumerism, he is never forced to make artistic compromises simply to fund a lavish lifestyle. His frugality is essentially his impenetrable armor. When he steps onto a stadium stage, he is not performing out of a desperate need to maintain an exorbitant standard of living. He is performing purely out of a fierce, undeniable passion for his craft and a deep love for his fans. His mother and father do not need to look at a designer handbag to validate his success. They simply have to look at the incredible, highly disciplined young man he has become. By rejecting the toxic, materialistic pitfalls of global fame and focusing entirely on securing his family's long-term legacy, I.N definitively proved that true maturity has absolutely nothing to do with age. He established a brilliant, highly sustainable blueprint for surviving sudden wealth, proving that the youngest member of the group is actually operating with the most advanced, strategically brilliant financial mindset in the entire industry. It is a stunning display of grounded intelligence that completely redefines what it means to be a successful young idol. But if you think I.N's intensely practical, hyper-frugal approach to securing his parents' future is the ultimate revelation, you need to prepare yourself for the absolute climax of this list, because the profoundly emotional, highly unexpected gesture reveal that number 1 will completely change how you view the deeply personal connection between a global superstar and their family. Number 1. The lyrical mastermind, Han. To completely understand the staggering magnitude of Han Ji-sung's financial autonomy and how he ultimately chose to honor his parents, you must first comprehend the sheer, undisputed level of raw talent he commands within the highly manufactured K-pop ecosystem. He is universally recognized as the undisputed ace of Stray Kids, possessing the incredibly rare ability to deliver blistering, highly technical rap verses, immediately followed by soaring, main vocal tier high notes, all while executing grueling choreography. But his true financial power does not stem solely from his stage presence, it stems from his brain. Alongside Bang Chan and Changbin, Han is the third foundational pillar of 3 Racha, the production powerhouse responsible for composing and writing nearly every track in the Stray Kids discography. He holds a massive, highly coveted portfolio of registered copyrights under the Korea Music Copyright Association, making him one of the youngest and most heavily credited producers in the entire industry. When an artist reaches this specific echelon of self-made, intellectual wealth, the traditional industry expectation is a rapid descent into aggressive, highly visible consumerism. The standard playbook for a newly minted hip-hop prodigy is to immediately march into a high-end Gangnam dealership, purchase an imported luxury sports car for their parents, and proudly display the exorbitant purchase across social media as undeniable proof of their dominance. However, to assume that Han succumbed to this predictable, materialistic trap is to fundamentally misunderstand the intense, high-stakes gamble his parents made to allow his career to exist, and the deep, unwavering respect he holds for their sacrifice. To fully grasp the psychological depth of his financial decisions, you have to look at the geographical and emotional realities of his childhood. Han spent a significant portion of his formative years living with his family in Malaysia. His parents, like most deeply protective guardians, envisioned a highly stable, traditional academic future for their son, completely insulated from the notoriously brutal, financially volatile South Korean entertainment sector. But Han harbored a fierce, undeniable passion for music that simply could not be contained within a traditional classroom. At just 14 years old, he approached his parents with an incredibly audacious proposition that completely altered the trajectory of their family. He struck a highly calculated deal with them. He asked for permission to travel to South Korea alone to audition for entertainment agencies, explicitly promising that if he failed to secure a trainee contract within a single year, he would immediately return to Malaysia and completely dedicate himself to his studies. This was not a casual request, it was a massive, terrifying leap of faith. his parents had to make the agonizing decision to allow their young teenager to board a plane, leaving the safety of their home to navigate the cutthroat, hyper-competitive streets of Seoul entirely on his own. They endured the crushing, daily anxiety of wondering if their child was eating properly, if he was being exploited, and if they had made a terrible mistake by letting him chase a seemingly impossible dream. When Han successfully infiltrated JYP Entertainment, survived the grueling reality show, and debuted in Stray Kids, the financial dynamic of his life completely inverted. As the group exploded into a multi-million-dollar global phenomenon and his personal 3 Racha royalty checks began clearing, Han found himself in possession of the kind of generational wealth that completely corrupts a young artist. Yet, when it came time to present his parents with a token of his ultimate gratitude for that initial, terrifying leap of faith, he explicitly rejected the loud, performative industry standard. He knew with absolute certainty that walking into an exclusive boutique to buy his mother a superficial, quilted Chanel handbag or handing his father the keys to a ridiculously expensive sports car would completely minimize the profound emotional toll they had endured. A piece of designer leather simply cannot compensate for the sleepless nights a mother spends worrying about her 14-year-old son living alone in a foreign country. Instead, Han executed a deeply unglamorous, highly strategic, and profoundly mature financial maneuver that demonstrated exactly what kind of man he had become. He entirely bypassed the flashy, rapidly depreciating luxury sector and utilized his massive, continuous royalty streams to construct an impenetrable fortress of long-term financial security for his parents. While specific banking details are fiercely protected, it is the verifiable reality of his lifestyle and family dynamic that he essentially handed his parents the ultimate, unpurchasable luxury, absolute, unshakable financial freedom. He completely eliminated their need to ever participate in the grueling modern economy again, ensuring that the very people who had taken a massive gamble on his future would spend the rest of their lives entirely free from economic anxiety. He essentially transformed his intellectual property, the lyrics and melodies he wrote in cramped dormitory rooms, into a permanent, bulletproof shield for his family. By choosing to secure their lifelong independence rather than purchasing a flashy, Instagram-ready trophy, Han proved that he viewed his immense wealth not as a prop for social validation, but as a sacred tool to honor the absolute trust his parents had placed in him. Furthermore, to truly comprehend the profound empathy his parents instilled in him long before he became a global superstar, you must absolutely look at how Han wields his immense wealth outside of his immediate family circle. A truly disconnected, arrogant celebrity would rapidly burn their excess royalties on fleeting nightlife and exclusive VIP experiences. Han, however, operates with a deeply ingrained, highly verified sense of social responsibility that perfectly mirrors the grounded values of his upbringing. This is an undeniable, extensively documented fact. To celebrate his birthday, rather than throwing a lavish, exorbitant party for himself, Han quietly and efficiently donated a staggering 100 million Korean won, approximately $75,000, directly to a medical charity specifically designed to fund critical treatments and hospital expenses for highly vulnerable, impoverished patients. He did not execute this massive financial transfer as a performative PR stunt. He simply moved the capital where it could actively save lives, utilizing his massive wealth as a direct weapon against human suffering. When his mother and father look at their son, their ultimate pride does not stem from a diamond watch or an imported vehicle. It stems directly from the undeniable fact that the 14-year-old boy they nervously sent to Seoul completely conquered the industry without losing his humanity. They raised a young man who took the astronomical wealth generated by his raw, unyielding talent and immediately transformed it into a powerful mechanism for familial protection and massive, life-altering philanthropy. By actively choosing quiet, permanent financial security over the performative redundancy of luxury goods, and by dedicating his excess wealth to healing the sick, Han completely shattered the stereotype of the reckless, superficial K-pop prodigy. He definitively proved that true maturity and genuine luxury have absolutely nothing to do with designer labels, but are entirely defined by a person's profound capacity to remain deeply compassionate, intensely loyal, and beautifully grounded regardless of their tax bracket. Ultimately, The financial choices made by the members of Stray Kids completely dismantle the pervasive illusion that all young celebrities succumb to the intoxicating, highly toxic allure of sudden fame. From Lee No's pragmatic security and Bang Chan's real estate strategies, to Seungmin's traditional discipline and Hyunjin's empathetic investments, from Felix's domestic philanthropy and Changbin's protective independence, all the way to I.N's extreme frugality and Han's massive charitable donations, these young men have universally rejected the superficial flex culture of the entertainment industry. They have definitively proven that the ultimate, most profound way to thank a parent for their lifelong sacrifice is not with a piece of expensive leather or a flashy sports car, but with the quiet, unshakable assurance that their child's moral compass remains completely intact. They are a brilliant, undeniable masterclass in navigating immense wealth with profound respect, proving to the world that while their music may be loud and aggressive, their true character is deeply, beautifully grounded in the absolute importance of family.